At Cannae, Hannibal destroyed the largest army Rome had yet sent against him, and then, according to Livy, his cavalry commander offered him the capital in 5 days. Hannibal said no. For 2,000 years, that pause has looked like one of history's great mistakes. But when we stripped away the future and gave an AI only what Hannibal could know that night, the boldest move was not the smartest one. The real missed opportunity was smaller, and potentially more dangerous to Rome. This is not a story about Carthaginian tanks, a modern Punic Empire, or a fantasy timeline. Our AI is blindfolded. It cannot know how Rome eventually responded, which cities later defected, who won the war, or what happened to Hannibal. It gets one decision room, one historical information set, and one question: what should Hannibal do next? On the conventional date of August 2nd, 216 BCE, the Roman Republic put an enormous army into the plain beside the Ow River. This was a deliberate concentration of force meant to end the invasion in one decisive confrontation. Ancient totals disagree, and the casualty figures are even less secure. But the strategic fact is not in doubt. Rome concentrated a much larger infantry force, while Hannibal held the decisive advantage in cavalry. The Romans were betting that mass would crush the center. Hannibal was betting that their need for a decisive result would make that mass predictable. Hannibal let his Spanish and Gallic center bend backward under Roman pressure. The Roman infantry drove deeper, believing it was breaking the line. Its depth, intended to create irresistible force, reduced the space in which individual units could react. Then the African infantry on both sides turned inward. Carthaginian cavalry, having driven off the Roman horse, returned against the Roman rear. Pressure now came from every direction. The Roman mass became a trap. By nightfall, the army that was meant to remove Hannibal from Italy had been shattered. Polybius and Livy give different numbers for the dead, captured, and escaped. We should not pretend we can recover an exact total. What Hannibal could see was enough. Roman standards in the dust, thousands of prisoners, abandoned camps, and no intact enemy. Field army still holding the ground at Cannae. The political shock was now moving toward Rome. Nearly 2 centuries later, Livy turned the moment into one of history's sharpest accusations. He attributed to Hannibal a promise that Hannibal could dine on the capital within 5 days, followed by the rebuke: "You know how to win, Hannibal, but not how to use victory." Livy then supplied the verdict himself. The delay saved Rome. But Polybius, our earlier surviving narrative, records Rome's panic without preserving that exchange. And Livy's scene compresses 4 different operations into one sentence. A cavalry force might move quickly. The whole army would move more slowly. Reaching Rome would not open its gates, and entering the city would not automatically produce a political settlement. Hannibal's cavalry could create alarm, cut messages, or appear outside the capital. None of those actions explains how infantry, wounded men, supplies, and siege work arrive behind it. The famous quotation is not our proof that Hannibal failed. It is the accusation we are putting on trial. Start with Hannibal's actual objective. Before Cannae, he had repeatedly separated Roman prisoners from Rome's Italian allies. Polybius says he released allied captives and presented his war as liberation from Roman control. That points to a political strategy. Destroy Roman armies to make Roman protection look worthless. detach the communities that supplied Rome with men, and force a favorable settlement. Rome was not powerful because one army stood outside one city. It was powerful because a web of communities supplied soldiers, roads, bases, food, and legitimacy. If that web held, another Roman force could appear. If it broke, Rome could be isolated without Hannibal ever climbing its walls. Now examine the force available. Hannibal's army had just fought an exhausting battle. Some formations had absorbed the full Roman advance. The wounded, prisoners, captured camps, and battlefield all required attention. Rome lay far to the northwest. An advance cavalry element could outrun the main body, but cavalry was the arm least able to take a fortified capital. The full army also needed food along the route. Moving fast reduces what can be carried. Foraging takes time and spreads troops out. Every detachment left behind to guard wounded men, captives, or baggage reduces the force arriving at Rome. Hannibal knew Rome had walls. He did not know the exact strength or morale behind them. Some Roman soldiers had escaped. Other Roman forces existed beyond Cannae. The city could call on citizens and allies, but no one in Hannibal's camp could know how quickly that system would react after such a loss. This is the central information gap. The battlefield told Hannibal what Rome had lost. It could not tell him what Rome was still willing or able to create. Panic might produce surrender, or panic might produce desperate organization. So choose before the AI does. Option A. March the main army toward Rome, and gamble on surrender or a rapid assault. Option B. Send cavalry pressure and an envoy. Test whether Rome is breaking, but keep the main army out of a siege. Option C. Recover. Turn Cannae into allied defections. Secure bases and supplies, and force Rome to negotiate by dismantling its coalition. Which one do you choose? The strongest case for option A is psychological. Rome has never suffered a defeat like this. Information is incomplete. If the capital is already politically hollow, every hour of delay gives its leaders time to recover. A rapid column might turn fear into surrender before Rome understands what survives. Its defenders may assume more Carthaginians are coming than actually are. An ally considering revolt may interpret the march as proof that Roman protection has ended. Even a demand rejected tomorrow might be accepted tonight. This is the highest upside move. It is also the plan with the most hidden gates. Rome does not have to beat Hannibal in another field battle. It only has to close the gates. If there is no immediate breach and no faction offering entry, Hannibal must assault, settle into a siege, or withdraw. Assault risks the veterans who created his advantage. A failed first attack makes the next one harder. Defenders learn where the danger is, repair weak points, and regain confidence. Siege sacrifices mobility and demands food, manpower, and time. It also gives every Roman force outside the city a fixed target. Withdrawal tells every watching ally that even after Cannae, Rome's walls still define the limit of Carthaginian power. Better supplies improve the march. They do not create a way through the wall. Option B separates speed from capture. Send a strong cavalry screen north to disrupt messages, magnify uncertainty, and make Rome wonder whether the main army is coming. At the same time, use prisoners and an envoy to test whether the Senate is open to terms. The screen has a deadline and a return route. It does not pretend it can conquer a city on horseback. The main army rests, reorganizes, and stays free to move. If Rome opens a political channel, Hannibal finds it at the moment of maximum pressure. If the gates close and the Senate refuses, the cavalry returns. The test fails cheaply. The army that generated the leverage remains intact. Option C attacks the system Hannibal had already targeted. Release allied captives. Offer autonomy. Move toward communities willing to provide food, bases, and political weight. A city that defects can become a magazine, a recruiting ground, or a signal to its neighbors. The theory is powerful. Rome cannot replace the army at Cannae if Italy stops supplying armies. But every defector creates an obligation. Some communities are rivals. One city's revolt may make its neighbor more loyal to Rome. Rome can avoid Hannibal, reassure loyal cities, punish an isolated rebel, and force one mobile Carthaginian army to defend several fixed points. If defections compound, Rome's power unravels. If they remain local, Hannibal gains responsibilities faster than strength. The Roman Red Team found the same weapon against all three plans: time. Rome does not need a complete recovery on the first day. It only needs to deny Hannibal a complete result. Against the march, delay behind walls. Against the cavalry, screen. Prove the main army is absent. Against the alliance strategy, isolate defectors and refuse the battle Hannibal wants. Each denial moves the problem back to Hannibal. Feed the army, protect the coalition, or reveal that the threat to Rome has limits. The question is therefore not which plan looks boldest on a map. It is which plan survives Rome saying no. The AI's answer is split because these are not three versions of the same time horizon. Best immediate action. Option B. Shock without siege. It spends cavalry speed to buy information and bargaining pressure, while keeping failure reversible. Best main strategy. Option C. Alliance conversion. If Rome will not negotiate now, attack the political system that generates Roman power. Highest upside gamble. Option A. The full march. But it becomes rational only with new intelligence, an open gate, an internal revolt, or evidence that Rome is ready to surrender. Without one of those signals, the march is not a plan for victory. It is a bet that the final obstacle will disappear before Hannibal reaches it. Boldness is not the missing variable. Access is. The surviving record suggests Hannibal already understood much of this logic. Livy says he released allied prisoners, offered Roman prisoners for ransom, and sent Carthalo to test whether the Senate would discuss peace. Ransom would return Roman citizens while also making Rome acknowledge Hannibal as the victor setting terms. The envoy would discover whether military shock had opened a political door. We cannot treat every detail or sequence in Livy as certain, but this is not the behavior of a commander who simply forgot that Rome existed. It is the behavior of a commander trying to convert military victory into political terms. So, should Hannibal have marched on Rome? Not blindly. Refusing a full army gamble without a credible entry mechanism was rational. The narrower improvement is a bounded pressure operation. Use cavalry to intensify the shock. Test Rome's willingness to negotiate. Gather intelligence, and withdraw before theater becomes entrapment. Even here, the evidence is too thin to claim Hannibal failed to apply pressure of this kind. What we can reject is Livy's easy equation. 1 day of rest did not equal 1 lost empire. This is the strategic conversion gap. Capital A. Victory gives you leverage. It does not automatically give you the result you actually need. The danger comes immediately after success, when momentum makes every next step look available. The next decision should test the cheapest missing assumption before you commit the resource that created the victory. A product can go viral without gaining distribution. Capital A. Negotiation can win a concession that no one can implement. In both cases, repeating the original success does not solve the new bottleneck. At Cannae, Hannibal gained extraordinary leverage. Rome's walls, political cohesion, and alliance system still stood between that leverage and peace. Now make the decision again. You know, the army is tired. You know Rome has walls. You do not know whether the city is breaking. Do you still order the march, send the cavalry probe, or attack the alliance system? Put A, B, or C in the comments, and tell us what single piece of information would change your answer. History made the choice. We rerun the decision.